Buncrana in Donegal, and this particular video, folks, is centering around, I should say, health and well-being.
Yes, Maura, we're the Buncrana Club here, and we're based in Inishowen in North Donegal. Hannah's a wee town on the shores of Lough Swilly. And the club itself has a membership, including adults and children, of between 500 and 600 now. And we cater for a number of teams here. We cater for men's football, ladies football, hurling, and we've started off some girls now and will be underage as well. So it's a big club. We started into the healthy clubs in phase 3, which was sort of 2017 to 2019. The main thing to start off with was getting a team together and letting the community know we were here. So we had a launch day for our healthy clubs, and we invited everybody that had anything to do with health and well-being in our community, from gyms to mindfulness to yoga to Pilates to Zumba, and we had speakers and cycling clubs, football clubs. Everybody came on the day, so it created an awareness what we have in our community, and it let us know how many activities was going on in our community. So that went down really well, and it involved a lot of people within the community that didn't really know anything about the club either. And that got us onto a good platform. In 2017 in August, there was severe flooding in Inishowen, and the healthy club team happened to have a meeting that evening, and we felt like we needed to reach out in some way, but how could we? So we decided to open the club on the Sunday and offer some support to those affected, and that snowballed from then. And we ended up, we had RTE here. We won the President's Award in Ulster that year for the initiative that we'd taken on. So that was a big project. We gathered support for the community in whatever way they needed. We helped some elderly folk manage their homes who didn't have family. We got a list of different builders and painters and so on to help community resources. We had support from mental health. We had support from organisations like the Council and the Inishowen Development Partnership to fingerpost and point people in the right direction in order to get the help they needed. Again, COVID was another big community response from the club. We had actually put a plan in place almost 2 nights before the government announced any sort of restrictions. We had a plan in place of how we were going to reach out to the community, and the wheels got rolling then. We were involved with our local supermarkets, helping them to deliver groceries to people that were in isolation. A lot of people, elderly people, had their families abroad, so they felt very isolated. So we set a lot of people up with digital technology so that they could FaceTime their families and their families could check in on them that way. We also linked in with the local Gardaí. They initially took on the role of doing the Meals on Wheels in the community. There is a group, Care of the Aged, that normally did the Meals on Wheels, but most of those were vulnerable. And then when they had to man the borders and do the checkpoints, that club was invited to see if they could offer some support. So we took that on as well. So that meant we were out at the weekends delivering meals to approximately 20 people every day at the weekend then as well. Every year HB do an ice cream fun day, and it's fundraising for Down syndrome. And our senior team mascot Owen is a member of Donegal Down syndrome, and we felt that we needed to offer support there because that was one of the charities. We normally reach out to charities every year, but we'd never supported Donegal Down syndrome. So we got a wee committee together and set up an ice cream fun day, and we had a sports day in the club grounds. And it was a bit of an alternative sports day because it wasn't necessarily all races and so on and so forth, but there was lots of fun things for the children to do. So we got on to our local schools, and our school in Buncrana has quite a lot of classes with specifically learning difficulties. So the schools really participated well as well, and Donegal Down syndrome highlighted the day to all their members. It was a fantastic day, and we ended up raising almost £5,000 for between Donegal Down syndrome and Down syndrome Ireland. So it was a great day and there was great fun all around. I would say go for it. Get a good team behind you. For me personally, I had to get somebody with a bit of IT and admin support because I'm not very good in the computer. Your club is probably doing a lot of it anyway, supporting your older members, looking out for them, making sure they're there on match days, making sure they've transport to and from the matches. These are the basic wee things. Anybody that's not well, maybe within your community, you're reaching out to them. If there's wakes in the community, you're going to support them. The club's doing the work anyway, so get the recognition for it, you know, and there's not an awful lot of paperwork to it, and you will learn and develop so many things within the club. There's a lot of people within our club and within our healthy club that wouldn't be involved in the executive or the running of the club, but they just love coming down for the social aspect of the community end of it, you know, helped our club to embed itself into the community as well. I feel, you know, more people are aware of the club and that it's not just about sport, you know, we're there to support the community when and whenever we can. You know, a lot of people probably still aren't aware that we're smoke free because there hasn't been many matches down here, but it has prompted a number of people within the club to give up smoking. So we'll see how it goes this year now when we have public back in place. So we have a defibrillator on site as well, and one of the things we wanted to do, the defibrillator was inside, so it wasn't accessible 24/7, 365 like most defibrillators in the community, because it was only accessible to those with a key. So we invested in a heated box for this side of our club. So the defibrillator is now located on the gable wall of the club there. You'll see it, and it's accessible now 24/7, 365, which is great.
Okay, great stuff.
Yeah, we got involved about a year or so ago, decided it was something we wanted to do just to improve the sustainability of the club, get involved with the community. So it was really good because the first thing that we did was a sort of an assessment of where we were. So we did a survey of the grounds and the building and the area, because we're right along the side of a river. So that helped us get an idea of where we were in terms of, you know, energy usage and sustainability and all that, gave us some ideas for some projects.
Great job. I jumped the gun provisionally there, so I did. It's probably everybody noticed. Fantastic stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Really good to see a lens into Buncrana and the way in which that worked. Like, absolutely fascinating. Fiona, let me come to you. Just your job working in public health. I mean, there's a lovely symmetry there, but the healthy club program, you're involved in it. You're involved in it with your club. Does that sound familiar? Just the Buncrana story to yours?
Yeah, I suppose we got involved in 2014 in the early stages as well, and thankfully, as each phase of the Healthy Club has developed, the process has become more slick and easier for clubs to get involved. It was a lot of, not paperwork, but there was a lot of online work in the early days. I think the key thing that I can relate to is getting the heads around the table, and it doesn't have to be the usual heads. You know, health and well-being, probably when it sort of started back in 2013-14, getting involved with the clubs, it was seen as the soft side. It was seen as the fluffy side of the GAA, and sort of somebody else does that. But I think probably in the last 7-8 years, clubs who have really got involved with health and well-being have seen how it's helped develop their club as an entity, as that one club, and health and well-being now is part and parcel. It's seen as supporting the members, supporting their community. And I think the key message there as well is that you don't have to be a health expert if there is such a person. It is about having a number of people around the table and making the connections, knowing the organisations that are out there. You know, we have organisations that are funded substantial pots of public money to work with communities, like our GAA communities, whether it be in inner towns or rural. We have organisations that are commissioned by the Public Health Agency Trust, the board, to work with communities. They're a targeted audience. So really what we are doing in community is providing them with a platform, an audience to allow them to do their work. And all it is about connecting those organisations to our communities. So those health and wellbeing committees are really the navigate, the coordinator. It's signposting. You're not expected, and I know people who've worked with me for a number of years will be tired hearing me say, you're not expected to be a counsellor, but know where to signpost people to be comfortable with it. Ask for help, and I know we've heard that a couple of times today in different streams, but ask for, never ever be uncomfortable or put yourself in an uncomfortable position where you don't know the answer to. Lift the phone and ask someone. So having that health and wellbeing committee that are that coordinating, signposting, introducing people to organisations where they can access help and whatever. We've seen earlier on about the 80% and would like more information on mental health. There are millions being put into mental health organisations out there that are just crying out to be involved with organisations like ourselves, and it is just about connecting that. So I think,
how do you connect that? How do you connect that, Fiona?
There are people, we have well structured county health and wellbeing officers. We've, if you take it from the ground up, we've got our club health and wellbeing structures, we've got our county health wellbeing structures, we've got a brilliant provincial team in Ulster GAA. If you can't get help in those 4 layers, and then if you start to reach out into trusts, to local PHA, to councils, there is someone there that will be able to signpost you to. We've got ample opportunity, and I think it is just about making people aware that there is support there.
So people might make that first jump. I suppose one thing that did sort of pick my ear up there in that Buncrana case study is the club mascot, as they say, Owen, I think he Down syndrome and supporting Down syndrome, and they actually run classes for people with learning difficulties. Now, that might be something that a GA club might think, well, that's kind of not our role. It's not our expertise. But if a club in Buncrana can go and do that and organise that and create that space and that environment, make that happen, what advice would you have for other clubs that might have a particular relevance for a particular charity, a particular theme, to go and do that when naturally it sits outside the GA? Because I think that's a big cross.
It is, but the culture of the GA is supporting ourselves and looking after ourselves. So if we're looking at clubs historically and what they've started to do, even in the last number of years, fundraising, they've been linking with local charities, and maybe someone's close to their heart. It may be something that has affected either a member or their club in some way. So it's again taking the fear factor out of it, taking the fact that it's not our business. It actually is. It's helping us grow as a club and supporting each other. And I think just, we've now the accessibility with the disability, one all that work that is ongoing years ago would have really not been looked at. So I think we're growing, we're evolving, and we're embracing change, and I think it can only be welcomed.
Yeah, and I would ask everybody that's listening back, throw in your questions. If you have anything for Fiona, Aogán, or indeed Fearghail, just put them in there. I'll try to put your questions, as many as I can. Fearghail, I just do want to come to you, because one thing that did sort of stand out as well from that Buncrana interview was the health and wellbeing programme actually got people involved in the club who, in the words of the case study, were not involved in the day-to-day running of the club. So it was attracting new members, which kind of goes back to your point at the very beginning, that this, as well as the benefits of bringing health and well-being and all the positive vibes that brings, it's actually attracting a different way of attracting people into the club, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's it. Thomas, I suppose the core position is the sport, and when you're in the playing bubble or the managing bubble, you're not looking beyond that. And there is a balance here again with clubs, because sometimes your thought process is, when you're in that very paranoid bubble that prevails in football teams, hurling teams, camogie teams, or whatever. But I suppose maybe in my own case, the older you get to, the more you understand and appreciate the additional value and the added value that a club can bring to a community. And it is about looking around your own community and seeing where the need is. It's no different to picking a football team. There are certain people skilled at something, or there are certain needs that are needed. So in Buncrana's case, they showed a need and they followed through on it. And in the end of the day, really whatever about cups and trophies around football and GA, if we bring on the self-esteem of one child, if we keep self-esteem within the community high and we value each other, then we're winning the lottery. So I suppose Fiona has a more holistic approach to it, and the public health agency and stuff. But it's a balance, and we like the competitive edge of the sports and the narrow view and the parish rivalry. But again, as society has developed, society has become so much more aware of all the needs of all the people in society, And it's a point I make very strongly often, is we owe it to the people who are now in their elder years, who are more vulnerable, or anybody who's vulnerable, who helped sustain the GAA right through all the decades to this point. So again, we're back to that word balance, but it will add value in a club. It will bring members along, and people who feel vulnerable or who feel whatever really, really, really appreciate it at times, at difficult times in their lives. They really appreciate a hand reaching out, be it from a GAA club or be it from wherever, to help it. So every family understands that, every community understands that, and there's so much more added value beyond the narrow focus of the sport. But again, it's fundamental too.
Yeah, Fiona, if I can just jump back to you, I remember years ago seeing an unbelievable example. It was actually Cushendall Hurling Club, Rory Oaks. So it was Rory Oak BL, Rory Oak's Biggest Loser. Now, I know a number of clubs have tried this, and in January, we're all maybe trying to shed off a bit of Christmas weight and all the festivities and celebrations and everything else. But they ran, and basically it lasted for a couple of months, where it was a big weight loss thing within the community, and there was teams and there was competitions, who was going to lose a bit more weight, and there was all those things, and they had a big celebration event. It turned into a massive fundraiser for them. But the first club that I ever encountered was Cushendall doing this, and this was years ago, and I just couldn't believe how positive it was. And it was maybe my first insight into health and well-being outside maybe necessarily a Gaelic Games thing. And what I often found with Gaelic clubs is when one does it and it works well, a lot of other ones will copy. So I suppose, is there any advice you would give to Gaelic clubs to maybe try something that's different, might link it into a bigger social event that couldn't turn into a bit of a fundraiser, if you like, that's going to expose those positive vibes?
Yeah, again, there's so many, and COVID has really brought out, I think, in people's, innovation and what, many clubs have tried, and you give just one example there. But I think to tap into the health and well-being element of it, public health is about helping people to stay healthy and about supporting them when they're ill. And we're not saying, and the GAA is not health and social care. It's not frontline services. By goodness, it's doing so much for creating more healthier communities. And I think that cannot be underestimated. So again, I would go back to identifying maybe a need or maybe an idea that someone has generated. And I think the whole, you would call it the cutting and pasting. I think absolutely look at what's happened elsewhere, try it out. And, looking to see what, we have people, our clubs that have tried the Biggest Loser. We've got the Ireland's Lights Up at the minute that have got people out walking the roads. With the Step Challenge, and I don't know how many clubs on here on the Step Challenge, but that's very competitive. You can see that, and you can see people getting very, very protective about how come you were able to do so many steps in that day, and challenging each other, and that's good. Do you know something? If it gets people out and it gets people active, that's what it's all about. So I think the competitive streak will never leave us. It's in us. But I think the added benefits of all those challenges and any programs that clubs can do has that added well-being benefit of personally, socially, physically. It all encompasses on it. And I think it can't be underestimated, the effect that those can have on individuals and clubs, and the more the merrier.
Yeah, and Aogán, if I could just get sort of comment on you in the sense that if you're coming from a traditional club that mightn't have an expertise in this, not health, well-being, mental health, might be phrases that just innocently scare people because of their ignorance. They just don't quite know what it's about. What would you say to those clubs to try and embrace this, and that fundamentally this is going to help in all facets of life? You're on mute there, Aogán.
All right, Thomas. I think Fiona has already outlined there are so many areas in your own county and at Ulster Council and Deacon Crow Park level where you can seek advice. There's a lot of help. But as we said earlier in relation to fundraising, look at a club that are doing it in your county or close to you. There are lots of clubs embracing health and well-being. It is part of our core philosophy. From the word go, the GAA was always about supporting people in their communities. And whatever helps and enhances your lifestyle, whatever makes you a happier person, a healthier person, that's where the GAA fits, and that's where it should be. Every club has a role to play in that area. And I would say, Thomas, though, that every club does it. They may not know they're doing it. I have seen, I mean, I don't want to be sad all on a morning like this, but at funerals, I attended a lot of funerals in my role in GAA, and every club, every area that you ever go to, the way that they put their the arms of comfort of the club around the family at a time of a funeral, it's incredible, it's uplifting, it's wonderful. They do it. They may not do it in a planned or a coordinated way, but they help. Do call in on neighbours. Do visit each other. But I mean, go back to the video. Buncrana there had every single area of life. There were plumbers, there were helpers, there were the Gardaí, there were the supporters, they took on everything. I think a lot of clubs are doing this. I think most clubs do support and provide health and well-being. And the final point I'd make is I think that Ireland Lights Up, as has been referenced by Fiona and Fearghail, that has really taken off. Every club in Ireland has a pitch. Every club in Ireland has a space where people can be invited to participate in a weekly walk, a nightly walk, or whatever suits for their local area. And it's amazing the number of new people that were not through those gates before, from all communities, from all backgrounds, and that's important in GAA clubs. We really must embrace that everybody in the community is a potential GAA supporter or member. We don't look at backgrounds in GAA of where you come from and where you don't come from, and this is one area we can embrace, which will bring us a whole lot of new membership who are probably wondering about GAA. And I think through the whole health and well-being programs, we can certainly reach out to a whole new audience, and they will provide great uplift to our clubs.
Brilliant. Okay, folks, we'll leave it there. It's interesting that the volunteerism and getting people involved constantly always comes back, and that's going to be the focus of our final video, and that's focused on Clan Gael in Lurgan.
Clan Gael are delighted to be celebrating our centenary in 2022. And we have a series of events to mark this historic year for the club. The last 100 years has brought great successes to our club, but the club would not be standing and surviving today if it wasn't for the generations of volunteers that contributed to club life time and time again. The events that we have planned to celebrate our centenary will only happen because of dedicated volunteers giving of their time and expertise to deliver for the betterment of others.
So my role in Clan Gael is volunteer and coaching development officer, basically. So I'm responsible for overseeing the coaching, but probably more importantly is overseeing our volunteers. Recently there we launched our club development plan, and a big part of that is looking at volunteers. It's the 3 R's: how we recruit, how we retain, and how we reward our volunteers. The executive committee are placing a lot on us developing our current volunteers and obviously recruiting new volunteers. We have now monthly specific coach education programs for our coaches and our volunteers. We use, obviously through the Ulster Council, the Armagh County Board, there's many online volunteer opportunities. We bring people down onto the pitch. Should that be making sure that they have the right training to be able to do their job successfully, and it's something that we want to continue over the coming years.
The past 10 years have seen a huge growth in our underage teams, and especially young girls and the ladies teams. And this comes about because of the volunteerism again. We have 50 coaches who look after these teams, who come down here night after night. And if you come to our pitch any night during the summer, it's absolutely full of children playing, which was absolutely fantastic to see. And not only that there, but the spinner from that is that a lot of these young people then volunteer within the clubs themselves to look after maybe teams a few ages below themselves. Plus, we got a lot of boys with 40 plus involved in the Gasca Award, the President's Award, and the Duke of Edinburgh Award. And we're actually the first club in Armagh to do this, and we're very proud of that. The huge benefits of that is that these young players then volunteer within the club themselves, know the jobs that need to be done. And these are the ones that do it: help around the coffee shop, maybe tidy around the club, help the steward at matches, sell tickets, and also to use their expertise, their educational expertise, which maybe some of the older members mightn't be too familiar with, on social media and other aspects, to help the club promote themselves within the community. One of the things we're really proud of is the fact that so many of our young volunteers are involved in the Ulster GAA Sports Inspire Award, where they complete 50 hours of volunteerism. And the hope is that they will be presented at the end of this with a certificate by the Minister of the Communities, and that'll be a big night for them, and it will further put a stamp on their journey of volunteerism in the GAA.
We do hold thank you nights for our volunteers. We offer their own personal training. You know, some of our volunteers from a coaching aspect will want to go on do level 1, level 2, and even progress their own training. So
Okay, we just seem to have a few difficulties there just with the tail end of that video, folks, but like we certainly get the vibe and the gist of what is actually happening. We've listened to Jimmy Smyth there, and we've listened to others in that video, just really explaining what is happening and all the great work is being done in Clan the Gael. So let's open that up again to our panel once more. I suppose, Fearghail, if I can come to you first of all, something that I did find was interesting. There's probably a thing in Gaelic games where once you're finished up playing and you're no more use to anybody on the pitch, then maybe we'll try and find a role for you to keep you involved. I thought it was quite sort of energizing just seeing some of the photographs in that video where the younger people who are clearly still involved in a playing capacity, but volunteering in their club in perhaps a different role. How important is that? And how do you actually do that? Because that takes some doing, maybe going to a 16-year-old and asking them to maybe do something that's a little different. And when you see the Duke of Edinburgh Award tying in with that, culturally, that maybe hasn't always been the case with Gaelic games. So it's new ways of getting young people involved in roles traditionally might have been for older people.
Yeah, well, that's it. Ultimately, Thomas, you know, people used to always say, well, when you retire from football, what's the feeling and whatever. And there wasn't much else going on around clubs in my day necessarily when your playing days were up. But ultimately, you know, how I describe it to people is that without knowing it, 3 nights a week with your club mates, whether you get on brilliantly with them, whether you get on whatever way with them, it's a little support network as a player. And you have the benefit of that support network. You don't even know it. But when you pull away from the playing days, your support network just leaves your life in one sense. So the beauty is now that the clubs do have so much more going on so that you can recontribute. Now, players are inherently selfish because you have to be to perform in the spotlight the way they do. And that's just the way it is. But behind all that and their focus, and as I said, sometimes the paranoia of the bubble of a playing bubble, they're genuine, sincere, honest people who are prepared to put in a shift, be it Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday training, or something else around the club. So there's lots of roles, and again, it eases a player out of retirement. You know, whatever, golf picks up the competitive nature in some players do whatever. But you know, again, I think now that the world has developed and clubs have developed, there's a lot more opportunities for people. And ultimately, we're regenerated by youth, no matter what way we look at it. And the youth, if you start at a young age, and I know in refereeing terms, there's a focus on this at the moment. Maybe we'll get a few young, good referees in too. So there's a world of opportunities. And again, whether you're sweeping out or whether you're doing whatever, you're part of something that gives you some reward, some feeling of value, and it's a support network, even though you don't even realize it sometimes in your life. It's that little support networks that's there, and and you know, as I said, people from every and any background, sport is sport is sport. A sportsman's a sportsman, a sportswoman's a sportswoman. I don't care where or what, they all have something to offer, and there's lots to be done around every club, so nobody should be stuck.
Yeah. Is the only thing that you would advise people to do if they're trying to get volunteers involved in the club? I mean, I even think of my own case. I was PRO for Maherfeld when I was 16. And the reason for that is because I was in UTV for a week's work experience. Thought, that's what I want to do for a living. How do I do that? Well, start writing for local newspapers. How do I do that? Well, become PRO for the football club. And there was a symmetry and it worked okay. And that came predominantly from the club and from me. But is there something in your head, a new bright spark that you might think, like, why don't you try that? Is there an idea of getting people involved? Something simple, something new?
Yeah, well, there's a learning process, Thomas, you know, and I have young ones coming up now, and I would be encouraging them to go in, because the more you partake in, you know, sometimes you do it reluctantly, you're learning, even basic committee procedures and what a chairman is, what a secretary is, and role. Later in their own lives, it happened that you followed a career in that sort of media and stuff, Thomas, but later in your own lives, it happens to me a lot, be it boards of governors, be it whatever, something trigs in your mind, and you go, do you know, I picked that up when I was on a Stewartstown committee all those years ago, something to do with procedure or how the world runs and what the governance is in society and in clubs. So you're never not learning, if that's grammatically anyway correct. It's something I would say to people in the workplace as well. You're never not learning. So the more things you partake in the world and the more experiences you have, the more you'll have tucked away for another day. So I think there is a value in that. And in your case, it shaped your position a bit. You had the feel of that for yourself anyway. So, you know, it's important. And, you know, you don't want to be too youthful running into, you know, where life experiences shape the older wisdom, and we have to always respect that. But, and sometimes we feel the young ones are so full of their own notions at times. But listen, they ought to be.
Just what exactly do you mean by that, Fearghail?
Well, you could come to our training someday, and then I'll have a chat with you. I'm only joking. But no, listen. It's, as was described earlier, whole of life, whole of family, whole of life, and there's a lot available for everybody. And you mightn't think you're picking anything up, you mightn't think you're learning anything, but I'll bet anybody on this that they will be doing that subconsciously. That's happening all the time.
Yeah, Aogán, volunteer burnout. It's a phrase that I've heard before. We talk about player burnout quite a lot, but volunteer burnout, I would imagine everybody that's involved in any GAA club up and down the land and beyond could point at someone and say, yeah, that is a case of volunteer burnout. How can we manage against that?
Well, it is a challenge, Thomas. There is no doubt about that. But I think a few phrases perhaps that have been used today already from panelists. First of all, creating the right environment. Fearghail mentioned that this morning. And again, going back to Common Pather Nefa, defining roles very clearly. Going back to your own experience a moment ago, you mentioned PRO. Example, I believe you should have a little PRO team rather than a PRO. I think we'll get more people active and involved as volunteers that way, rather than having one person do everything. I see many clubs where they have a PRO who chairs a little group. One of the group will perhaps look after social media. One will do whatever writing perhaps may have to be done. Another with an artistic bent, and perhaps another with maybe a skill in the area of emptying and public work. So in that way, I do believe we need more volunteers, not less. We need to be what we learned today from all the videos, the need for organization, not massive stuff, but still sitting it down, organize it, plan it, define clearly what it is we're asking someone to do. I know from my own days when I was involved in the club, I was always asked at every step of the way to come in and help out. That was the phrase, which was used everywhere. But it's not enough to use that type of language, in my opinion, any longer. Come in and help out grows. It's not defined, it's ill-defined, and it goes in all types of directions. GAA, we mentioned it all along. There's a theme running through everything today. The GAA is evolving and changing, and rightly so. We must evolve, we must change to reflect the Ireland we find ourselves in. And the Ireland we find ourselves in, with all our youth and all the people of today, they are much more, they need the right environment, they need clarity, they need purpose, they need ambition, and roles do need to be defined. Your original question, is there an issue with player burnout or with burnout? There is, and we have to address it. But I believe the solution to it is having more people involved, doing a little bit less. I see it in some clubs, not many nowadays, but in some clubs, the county board delegate is also the coaching officer, is also training teams, and perhaps he might even be a player. We need to be careful of that. And that's where the more experienced, perhaps administrators in our clubs need to watch out, encourage volunteers, value them, acknowledge them, thank them. watch out for the girl or the boy who perhaps is being asked to do too much. And it's because they themselves will not notice it. It takes others to do it. Compared to many organisations on the island of Ireland, it's actually a good problem, because I know it in other fora where I'm still involved. Most amateur organisations have the opposite problem. They simply cannot get anyone to engage with them. We are beginning to find that a little in the GAA. I hope it doesn't continue, but we do need to encourage more volunteers. But my solution to it, or one of the solutions, is what has been going on here this morning: clarity of roles. Clearly define what you're asking someone to do, and do not overburden anyone. And do it all within the right environment. Things need to be slick, they need to be done properly, we need to start everything on time, presentation has to be good, all of that. Is that a big ask? Yes, it is. But the GAA was never, we never progressed to where we are now without facing challenges and facing it by doing things in the best way possible. That's not an answer, Thomas, but it is a challenge for us that I think we are embracing. And the last point, if I may, I think it's hugely important, I said this earlier, that we embrace everybody, male and female, camogie, ladies football, handball, rounders, score, Irish language enthusiasts, walkers, and people of maybe none of that. We need everybody involved in one club, one overarching umbrella, and bring everyone involved with us and leaving nobody out.
Brilliant. Aogán, thank you very much indeed. Fun, I just want to come to you just when you mentioned about the PRO thing. I just noticed just on Twitter last night, Newbridge in South Derry brought out their new committee, and it's a wee girl, Emer Stinson. She's getting her ACL done at the minute. She plays camogie for the club. She's obviously going to be out for a year. She's the PRO. She actually has 3 or 4 in her team of PROs behind that. So it is a team. It is young people, it's people involved, which is hugely encouraging and fresh. Fiona, let me come to you. We talked about sort of volunteer burnout. Fearghail suggested that you're getting people on board. I suppose traditionally, some clubs, that's where we stop, right? Aha, we've got you in. There's a man, there's a woman that could do a great job. Great, that's you for the next 25 years. I suppose it's rewarding these people. And what that word reward is, I'm not quite sure, but how you make them feel their worth. How do you do that? Because the job doesn't stop when you get them involved, does it?
Yeah, I think that Gael highlighted a really important part there. It was just acknowledging the time and the effort that volunteers do. And I know sometimes it doesn't have to be an all singing, all dancing, but a simple thank you. You know, I know that we had done a couch to 5K a couple of years ago, and we'd sent out, there was a couple of sponsors, local small individuals and companies who had give a bit of money to do it, and we'd sent out an email afterwards just to thank them, and a couple of them came back and said they'd never actually been thanked before after an event. It was sort of, they would come ask for money and away they go. So I think that thank you cannot be underestimated at any stage. I think as well the succession plan, which has already been mentioned, you know, if we can work with our young people, and I'm with Dermot into middle age at this stage, and I think if we can set a mindset in our young people that getting involved in the organisational part of a club is as important as training to go out and play. It's just part and parcel of the club. You train to go out and play at the weekend or during the week for your team, but yet and all, you need to help as well with the background stuff to help that club organise. So I think we've instilled that this great young leaders program that's done by Ulster GAA is fantastic. All those volunteer aspect programs that are run starts to instill that, because you can see the clubs where there has been those individuals who have been left for the 25 years in that role. They're now suffering that there is no one coming through, and there's that gap in expertise and roles. But if you start to embed that in the culture and that wheel of volunteerism and bringing on young people, and becomes that mindset, this is just part and parcel. It's how the club, we need this to move forward to the next stage. And I think if building that in is really, really keen. I think Gael have it done there really well. And if anybody says no to Jimmy Smyth giving them a hand with that voice, I don't know, there's something fundamentally wrong with them. So fair play to them.
Yeah, great voice, great man is our Jimmy. Yes, and brilliant, Fiona. I just one last question I do want to bring in. I don't want to overrun. Ferg, I want to come to you because one of the questions that's coming from Brian, who's on the call here this morning. How do I get players more involved in volunteering in the club? Now, you've said at the start, that can be tricky because they're concentrating on their performance. But I guess that is a challenge. How do you actually do that, or should we be doing that?
Yeah, some groups of players have a rule that a player should never be on the committee or should never be the youth officer or whatever. And I've been in those groups as well. So this is a very, very difficult balance because, again, the primary focus remains a sporting focus. And whether we like it or not, winning football matches or hurling matches or whatever is a critical moment around all clubs.
Can you do both? And the reason I asked that, I did a podcast during the week with Conor Laverty, who's obviously the Kilcoo joint captain, winning the All-Ireland club. And Oisin McConville was with me, and he said he got this phone call 20 years ago, 18, 19 years ago, from this guy from Kilcoo, coaching officer, wanting Oisin to come down to do a presentation. So Oisin lands down, expecting this middle-aged guy, some boy called Conor Laverty, with maybe a couple of kids involved, lands down. Conor Laverty is, as Oisin said, the same size as he is now, in fairness, but looks at him, and he was a teenager, and he was coaching officer for the club since then. Yet you look at that guy, he's played for Down, he captains Kilcoo, and when you, as you will know, play for Kilcoo, it is like just, they're so into it, it is unbelievable. But he was still able to manage that. But I guess not everybody's like Conor Laverty.
Yeah, well, that's the point. I suppose certain people are built as like a team. Some people suit the full back role, man marking, some people whatever. But I think if players are gently educated as to what else is going on around them, because they're generally invisible to it. They just expect your food to be set out after training. You expect your kit to be sorted. You expect these sorts of things. And they've never had it opened up. They've never had it opened up to them in life because that's just the way it is. And their primary function is to come and perform for the club. And in 99% of cases, they all do it admirably. But so I think if you gently bring them along and let them see, and you don't want to be going in and saying, listen, you guys are spoiled rotten. You get everything around this club. You deserve nothing and all the rest, because you're only going to encourage disunion. But I suppose, again, in terms of the overall committee position, the point for players is this: they're put under public scrutiny every weekend, right? And I make this point in business a lot. If we put into business the performance analysis that football teams put into their performance, then we'd all be millionaires. So club members must remember, and you could, I don't know if anybody will design, maybe Jermid will design a software platform to performance analyze people around a club in the non-playing roles. Now that's a bit severe in a volunteer's role, but players are publicly judged. Their performance, their introspection and their performance analysis is beyond control at the moment. Let me tell you that. And I'm not encouraging us to be looking over the shoulder of every volunteer who's doing their role, whatever it be, in any club. But I suppose you have to always remember that when you're dealing with a playing cohort, that they're not soft on themselves. They're doing it for the club. And I think you gently bring them along. And it would be unfair to burden volunteers with the type of performance analysis that the players are burdened with, essentially, either publicly or privately. But I think if everybody remains tolerant of each other, like everything else in life, it can all work swimmingly.
Brilliant. Listen, Fearghail, Fiona, Aogán, we're out of time. Thank you very much indeed. Fearghail, good luck tomorrow. Big game against Kildare. And it's good to see another county manager wearing his club top as well. So it's brilliant stuff. Listen, folks, thank you very much. We're going to go move on to Stephen Ferris, but really appreciate your time. Much appreciated this morning. As you may have been listening on the call this morning, there were polls coming up and down. So we're just going to run through those polls now as we speak, as we say goodbye to Fiona, Aogán and Fearghail. And some of those polls that came up, we'll just go through the different results. If your club is planning a capital project in the next 5 years, what top 3 elements will that entail? Well, pitch development, 67%. That perhaps is no surprise. Community facilities, floodlights, dressing rooms, walking track, and then stand. So stand was down at the bottom. Pitch development seems to be the really big thing at the very top. Okay, so that's one poll. Moving on to our next one. Does your club have a club development plan? Kind of scary, this perhaps. Yes, 61%, no, 32%, and don't know, 7%. So they don't know. If you don't know it, I think that's perfectly fine to say that. But I guess if you don't have a club development plan, that's a third of the people on this call, which is This definitely needs addressing. So, okay, that's really interesting, really, really interesting. Our next one, do you feel the recent health and wellbeing drive within the GAA is valuable and a valuable addition to the association? Yes, 95%. Don't know, 5%, and no, thankfully, is 0%. So that's an overwhelming majority. Every single person believes that it is not a deterrent within the GAA. So they really see those links between health and well-being and that drive and the betterment of the GAA, which is really, really positive. Our next one, does your club currently involve youth volunteers? Yes, 69%. No, 19%, and don't know, 11. So still you're talking about the guts of a third of people are either know or don't know whether your club is involved with youthful volunteers as such. So work to be done for at least a third of those clubs. Okay, good stuff. Have we one more? No, we do not. That is it. So, okay, there are the polls that came up previously. So as I said to Fiona, Aogán and Fearghail, thank you very much indeed for their participation. That really, really interesting. I have to say now, really, really interesting. You can see the messages coming through.